everyone. Welcome to our Inspiring Thoughts podcast. We're very lucky this time to have Maria Wilson on with us, who's Saxon HR consultancy. Maria, it's great to have you on board on the podcast today.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here as well. Thank you for inviting me.
That's all right. And we've already had Maria and I have had a good chat before. I think we're going to be talking for a bit today because we're very passionate about our subjects and we work in. So I'll try and keep us on track, but we probably might go off and talk a bit longer, Maria, if that's all right.
That's fine, but there's probably a risk of that happening, yeah.
So, Maria, welcome. And we're going to talk today about, I saw on LinkedIn and you put out, and you've been working really hard around 5 steps of employee engagement, which we're going to touch on in a moment. And that links in with us as an organisation looking at mediation, leadership and modernising HR policies, really, really key about employee engagement. So before I go into the questions, would you just tell our audience about your career history?
Yeah, sure. So I've been working in HR for 24 years now. I started off before that as a PA for an employment solicitor, actually. And that's where I got my interest in the employment law, employment tribunals, conflict resolution, just policies, procedures, investigations, that kind of thing. And then I really wanted to move into an in-house HR department to kind of learn from the other side. I worked, I think it must have been about 18 months, perhaps, for a recruitment company in their HR department. And then I got this fantastic opportunity. I'd applied, just sent my CV off, and got a fantastic opportunity to join Asda Stores as a HR manager. So massive learning curve, but it was absolutely fantastic. The best training I've ever had. And for the first 3 months of my employment, myself and other newly appointed managers went to what they called a store of learning. And you literally just learn from the ground up. So I was stacking shelves, I was in the warehouse, I was on checkouts, seeing customers fighting over Brussels sprouts at Christmas time. We saw all of that, we heard all of that, unfortunately. But then, I was there for 4 years, I think, and then worked in hospitality, worked for a couple of hotel chains, did a regional role, worked for the NHS after I had my son, because obviously I couldn't travel the country. So I took sort of a little side step in my career and worked in the NHS as a senior HR advisor. I was promoted twice whilst I was there over those 7 years. And from the NHS, again, another challenging kind of industry. I worked in care, social care and complex care, more recently as a HR director for a complex care company based in London. And October of last year, I took the huge plunge and set up my own consultancy business. So that's my story, really.
No, it's really nice that about a broadness of understanding, like with ASDA, the shop floor, and developing. So you can then, when you talk to colleagues, you understand what's going on. And I think when we talked off air that you said HR isn't just sitting behind a desk. The actual true HR, you believe, is out and about, really being there with the colleagues and working with them, isn't it?
Yeah, it's having that visibility and building that trust and that rapport with employees. It's not just with managers. I think sometimes the perception of HR is that you're there for the company. Yes, you're employed by the company. And now, as my consultancy, I'm employed by the client. But what I always say to my clients, it's about doing the right thing. If I see something that's not right, or a decision that you would like to make as a client that's all right, I'm going to be honest with you and I'm going to tell you that this is not appropriate. I was having the exact conversation with a client this morning that I met, a prospective new client, and he said, that's great because that's how I want to work. So it's about building that trust and that rapport and really understanding the challenges that an organisation has from the ground up. And employees will speak to you in HR. Often they see HR as kind of a bit distant and not very visible. I've been the complete opposite to that, and I would encourage all HR practitioners to get on the shop floor, as I still call it, talking to employees, building up a simple hello, how are you, how was your weekend? It just builds from there, really. And it's a mistake, that a really, really big mistake that a lot of managers, directors, people in leadership sort of teams don't do, and that's talking to your employees and really getting to know them.
But there becomes a gulf, doesn't it?
It
They lose
does, yeah.
sight. So
Yeah,
when vision values come down, the employees go, "We are not actually portraying what
yes,
you say." So no, I definitely relate to that,
yeah, yeah,
especially from my world in the banking industry prior
yeah.
to the conflict resolution. I can definitely relate to it.
Absolutely. You
Yeah,
get that division, you get that them and us, and that's not what
yes,
it's about. You know, you've got
yeah,
to, you're working together, you're part of a team, and it's really important to be that, that open door policy, having that visibility. That's really key
yeah.
for me and really important for me as well.
No, absolutely, and it just strikes a brilliant chord with me. So let's step into the question. Now, your questions I said to you off air are really easy to kind of set up for today because I want to be nosy about the steps. So we're going to
Yeah,
kind of talk through the steps. So, what brought you to the 5 steps of employee engagement? How did you get that vision or start off?
yeah.
What kind of struck a chord?
I think firstly, because my career has been in some really challenging industries. I don't do things by halves, clearly. And
Yeah,
I've worked in sort of high turnover, high
yeah,
absence, low morale, typically low paid environments. And it's tough. These are
yeah,
challenging environments. A lot, the front facing, the customer facing, and it can be, quite
yeah,
upsetting for if you're in a food, hospitality, if you're in a hotel or you're working food retail, when customers, and we all know customers unfortunately can be very rude,
yeah,
aggressive at times. So, you've got to be able to find ways to attract and retain those employees and
yeah,
value them. And over the years, I've developed these strategies that have helped me, that I've implemented within the workplaces that
yeah,
I have been in. And it's helped to increase morale, to decrease
yeah,
turnover, to decrease absences, and also grievances as well. It has all that
yeah,
knock-on effect. And at the end of it, you kind of get a highly skilled, highly engaged team that feel valued and want to stay and have that loyalty towards
yeah,
their employer. And the important thing here with these strategies is that it's not one person that implements them, it's
yes,
everybody that has to implement them. So
yeah,
I can work in an environment and I can put this into as much as I can,
yeah,
but if it's not followed through from every single level, it won't work. So it's
yeah.
really important that you have buy-in from everybody, and that total buy-in from the top,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. And so from you're saying there, from your experience building it over a period of time, you've worked in
Yeah.
some high kind of turnover industries, challenging
Yes.
industry, and then you've built over time your 5
Yes.
kind of stages of employer
Yeah.
engagement.
Yeah.
And what gives you the biggest buzz then about employer engagement? So what kind of you go, "Ah, do you know what? That's brilliant that we've
Yeah.
done that," or say, what gives you the biggest buzz?
I think it's obviously there's the data, isn't there? You can
Yeah.
see the effect from low turnover, low
Yeah.
absence, high engaged people, surveys where they come out, lots of people have participated and you get a high score. But
Yeah.
I think it's just the culture within the organization. You can
Yeah.
really see happy employees. You can see people that are open to more development. You can see people
Yeah.
that feel valued because they're being recognized for their achievements.
Yeah.
And it's that team spirit. I can't put a finger on it, but you can feel it. You can
Yeah.
walk into a company and you can feel the culture, a positive
Yes.
culture. You can also walk into an environment and you can feel a negative culture.
Yeah.
You can it's not tangible, but you feel it. You really
Mm.
do see it.
Yeah.
Yes, the stats talk for themselves, but it is really, really important to kind of be able to feel that healthy,
Yeah.
happy environment when you walk into somewhere. And
Yeah.
that's what I
And
love. That's what I
uh,
see.
And I echo that. So working in the bank, working in so many different branches, I could walk into a branch and you feel the energy, atmosphere. You know it's a
Yeah,
good branch. I don't need to look at the data. That you
no,
could just kind of feel it. People are happy, smiley,
yeah,
waving. Hello, Steve. How
exactly.
are you? They're great.
Yeah,
I can go into another branch. It could feel as cold as anything. People are
yes,
scuttling away,
yeah,
not to. And you go, and then you go. Well, let's have a look at the data. And you go, well, the evidence
yeah,
speaks for itself. So,
exactly.
yeah, I think you and I
Um,
echo exactly the same feeling there. About we don't need the data.
Absolutely.
You can feel it, can't you?
And what you get with highly engaged employees, and when you get that positivity,
Yeah.
is that people want to go above and beyond. They want to
Yes.
provide a better service to customers and clients, and as a result, the company is more likely to be sort of more profitable. Stats
Yeah.
show that with a highly engaged workforce, your business is likely to be 21 up to 21% more profitable.
Yeah.
That's nothing to be sniffed at all.
No.
The stats show, that the figures speak for themselves in this.
Yeah.
And I don't get it if when people say, oh, and I hear this quite often, and I know some people say it in jest, but I don't
Yeah.
get it when people say, oh, this company would be great if I didn't have employees. Well, actually, your employees are making your business.
Yes.
Your employees are the
Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
are serving your customers, and putting the profit at the end of
Yeah.
the year in
Yeah.
in the bank. So it's about appreciating them for what they're
Yes.
doing, because and I say often to people, well, how much better do you think your performance as a business and your profit would be if you had a highly engaged workforce? If they
Yes.
were happy, if they
Yeah.
want to go above and beyond, what difference do you think that's going to make at the end of the day to your bank balance,
Yeah.
business bank balance? And it's almost like sometimes the light bulb moment goes off.
Yeah.
But I love to kind of talk about employee engagement, because it's so critical and it's so key.
Yeah.
And with our current, cost of living crisis, even more so, it's so,
Yeah.
so important to
Yeah.
be able to stand out from that next business. You're going to have a
Yes.
competitor right next to you, and how are they managing to retain their
Yeah.
employees? And they've got a great, happy workforce, paying exactly the same wages or
Yeah.
salaries, but you're losing your employees. Well, to be honest, it's about engaged employees, and it's
Yes.
about culture that makes the vast difference, really.
Yes. Yeah.
I've always said I've always said a salary increase makes employees happy for perhaps a
Yeah.
day, but what happens the other 364 days?
Yeah.
If they're not communicated to, if they're not being recognized for their
Yeah.
achievements, if they don't have a voice, that's going to be
Yeah.
worthless.
When I always look at the about hygiene factors and motivating factors. A pay rise, great, one day, and people live to their means. Whereas the hygiene factors are so important about
Yeah,
that recognition, reward, thankful. Where I work
totally.
is a good environment. Toilet rolls in the toilet. All those kind of things are so important for
Oh,
engaged colleagues. Yeah, no, I think we're definitely aligned on this, Maria. I'm
yeah.
going to be doing my Braveheart speech later around that. So. Guess what?
Fabulous.
As the audience are going to say to me, Steve, tell me about the questions. They're really easy. We're going to find about each step as we go through.
Okay,
So,
great.
what's step one of the
So,
employer engagement?
So the first step, sorry, I've also kind of made some notes in case I
That's
kind of
okay.
lost track here, but
That's okay.
investing in employees' careers is definitely the first one.
Yeah.
And, I've always said that, you not only are keeping ahead of the game with technology,
Yeah.
with a skilled workforce, but you've got that succession plan in place. If you're building
Yeah.
your team for the future, if somebody does decide to leave, you've got that backfill, you've got that succession
Yes.
plan in the
Yeah.
background, you've got somebody ready. And sometimes employers or clients will say to me, well, I don't have a job for that person to go to. And I said, well, be
Yeah.
happy for them if they leave, because what
Yeah.
you've done is you've created a
Yeah.
manager of the future. You've invested in their careers, and they will appreciate that. They will look back and go,
Yes.
okay, there's no place for me to develop because
Yeah.
turnover is low and they can't create a
Yeah.
management position for me. But actually, they're going to always appreciate the fact that you invested that time in them. So
Yes.
don't look at it as something sad that they're leaving and that you don't want them to
Yeah.
leave. Look at it as, yes, it is sad that they're going, because they're a
Yeah.
great employee and you don't want to lose them, but they're going to take that skill and that knowledge and that you've given them, that
Yeah.
you've provided and you've invested in them, and they're going to
Yeah.
flourish, and they'll
Yeah.
flourish somewhere where they can. And that's the way I look at it, really. So I think, there is a statistic that says that, from a recent survey, that employees that feel invested in,
Yeah.
their loyalty will increase to 94% to
Yes.
their employer. That's a huge, huge statistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
94%. And if you don't have engaged employees, again, from the same survey, the UK engagement rate was
Yeah.
49%. So out of that, more than half were not engaged. And
Yes.
from that 13% were actively disengaged. So that means they're looking elsewhere for other
Yeah.
jobs. But in the meantime, if they're not finding other jobs, they are potentially feeling demoralized, they're
Yeah.
unhappy, but they're also affecting other people around them. So you could
Correct.
have
Yeah.
engaged employees. It will bring their performance down. It will bring the
Yeah.
service that they're providing to clients or
Yeah.
customers down as well. So it's really important about investing that time within your employees. So,
Yeah.
on the job training, coaching, mentoring, qualifications, whether it's CIPD
Yeah.
or any kind of accreditation. It's investing that time in
Yeah.
that employee, and their loyalty percentage
Yeah.
will increase because they feel that they're being invested in,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, especially as well, Maria, to recruit a new person, I think ACAS figures to recruit a new person up to 6 months is going to cost person £25,000. So that's just recruitment
Yes.
costs plus learning costs and
Yeah,
getting them up to speed.
that's
Whereas
crazy, isn't it?
if you pay out for someone's development, it could be £1,000, £500, whatever. Come on, the costs are
Yeah,
quite easy to work out.
yeah.
They're a
The
no-brainer. But too
return
many
on that
organisations,
investment, yeah,
too many
absolutely. The return on that
organisations,
investment is vast, isn't it, to the
yeah, they go,
organisation,
well, that's
to your customers as well.
yes.
Absolutely.
So, so
It's
I find that absolutely fascinating, totally agreeable. And a bit now is because of the recruitment part with most in the UK, people have got a bigger choice. They're going to
yes, they have.
walk, aren't they? If they don't get what they need, they are going to
Yeah,
make that decision to go in that organization over there. Yeah, okay, they're not going to pay me more money or maybe a little bit more, but this is going to give me a launch to move forward in my career development, those kind of things. And the other thing, when
absolutely.
I get on my high horse here, a lot of people want to do a good job, but they want to get better at it. They don't always want to move on or etc. But quite a few
That's right.
organisations go, well, they've been here for there. They just want to do a good job. Yeah, but they can learn new skills, become better at their job, quicker, efficient. Well, we've got to keep
Yeah.
developing people, haven't we?
Constantly. You've got to keep engaging them and keep challenging them. And again, that's a really good point there, actually, because I wrote about that in an article at the beginning of the year that, sometimes people will say, well, I've got this employee that's been here
Yeah,
10 years, doesn't want to develop any further, doesn't want to do
yeah,
anything different, is quite happy, and that's great. That's
yeah,
absolutely fine because you've got that loyalty from that employee, and they're a great marketing tool for your employee.
yes,
Look at this employee, they're happy, they enjoy working here, and we've got that loyalty. So they're doing something
yeah,
right. And they say, well, how do I keep this person motivated and engaged? Well, you don't have to give them a different job role, of course, because they
no,
don't want that. But what you can do is perhaps involve them in the recruitment of people joining that
yes,
team. It
yeah,
gives them that additional kind of
yeah,
responsibility, and also being involved in the induction of a new
yes,
employee as well. It's something slightly different to the norm within their role,
yeah,
but it keeps them engaged. It's something to look forward to. And what
yes,
you're doing is you're saying to that employee, I trust you to do
correct.
this because I know you're good
Yeah,
at what you do, and I know that you're going to represent the company
yeah,
better, as well.
yeah,
And that gives that makes that person feel valued
yeah,
as well. So
yeah,
I think, investing in your employees' careers, it's a win-win situation, not just for the employee, but also for the company, but also for the customer at the end,
yeah,
because they're going to get a better quality of service
yeah,
with highly engaged employees because they feel that loyalty towards their employer. They want to do that better
yes.
and they want to give that quality service as well.
Yeah, and you can feel it, can't you? If that person enjoys that company, the service you get, a nice smile, how are you, conversation,
Absolutely.
etc. Whereas
Yeah.
there was a shop recently, my wife and I walked out because there wasn't even a smile, there wasn't even like great for us to be there. It was more grunts and that, and you're just thinking,
Yeah.
I'm not sure you really enjoy where you work, to be
Yeah.
honest. So yeah,
I wonder
really
if
good one.
wonder if we went to the same shop because we
Oh,
had exactly the same at the weekend, funnily enough. So my husband and I went to it somewhere on Saturday morning, and there was this young lad, um, uh, and I don't know whether he'd had a heavy night the night before, but
yeah,
he did not utter a word.
yeah,
We had a grunt, but that was about it. And we both sort of said as we were walking out, "Great, we really want to come here again." But
yes,
it shows when you represent your business well,
yeah,
you're happy, you're cheerful, you're engaging, your
yeah,
customers will talk about the poor experiences. They might
yes,
not necessarily talk so much openly about the good experiences, but they will talk, I can guarantee, they'll go on to Facebook, they'll talk about it on, Facebook pages, they'll talk about it to other employees, other people, other friends and families, and that's bad
Yes.
marketing.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Yeah.
you've
Would.
got a great service, that's brilliant,
Yeah.
and it is important to be that face and that image of the
Yes.
company. So
Yeah.
someone that doesn't look particularly happy, not really an ideal place for them to be.
No. Definitely, we're striking that off the family fortunes list of like, we don't want that there.
Yeah,
So,
I like that one.
people are going to go, Steve, where are you going to go with your next question? I'd like to be nosy about step 2. So, what's
Yeah.
step 2 of
Okay, so
employee
step
engagement?
2, this is a nice, easy one. This is recognizing employees' achievements. So,
Yeah.
and people often misinterpret this as, oh, giving them a pay rise or giving them a bonus. And it isn't. Of
Yeah.
course, salary increase at the moment does help. Of course it does. Interest
Yeah.
rates, mortgages, everything is costing everybody, fuel prices, it's crazy out there at the moment. But it isn't about that. Yes, that does help. And
Yeah.
if that is done, it can't be done in isolation, because that is just going to totally
Yeah.
ruin the whole point of giving a salary increase. And as I said to you before we joined the
Yeah.
podcast, that a salary increase can make an employee happy for a day, but the
Yeah.
other remaining 364 days, if they don't feel valued and they don't feel invested
Yeah.
in that, they're in exactly the same spot, other than having a
Yes.
little bit extra money at the end of the month. So, again, within a recent survey, it was a Gallup survey, I do believe, there was 58% of employees stated that giving recognition was the most effective way to improve employee engagement.
Yeah.
That's a big percentage, really.
Yeah.
And that, employees will naturally put in more effort in their role and give back to within, their
Yeah.
performance, if they feel recognized for their achievements. And these are really simple strategies, but low cost. I'm not talking spending hundreds and,
Yeah.
or thousands on implementing all these, company benefits.
Yeah.
I'm talking about some really, really simple things. And one of those is long service awards, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
If you've this, unfortunately, these days people don't stay as long as they did sort
Yes.
of 10, 20, 30 years ago. You were in a job for life, when I
Yeah.
first started in employment. All those years ago. Um, but these days people might move sort of after a couple of years. So
Yeah.
recognizing when people are staying 2, 5, 8,
Yes.
10, 15 years is a great way of recognizing that. And I say to clients, it can be something really simple: a certificate, a letter, a gift card,
Yeah.
a meal out. Here's
Yeah.
£100 for a meal. This is a gift card for this. But what I think is really good, and just goes that one step further, is actually giving employees a choice of what they would
Yes.
like. So you can say, this is what we offer, and you've got
Yeah.
this, and asking them what they would like, because they've got a choice then, and it just engages
Yes.
them even further.
Yeah.
Some of the other things, employee of the month. And now this one's also, that can be a tricky one, because it very much depends on the size of the organization.
Yeah.
For a small business, it's not going to work, because you're going to have the same people voting for the
Yes.
same people.
Yeah.
But what I suggest is aligning it to company values.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
good.
not
Yeah.
a
Good.
case of, it's not a case of, oh, they went above and beyond, or they did they great
Yeah.
service to the customer, or they're just a really great employee. It has to be
Yes.
something more specific. So you're inviting employees to
Yeah.
vote for, or to submit votes for a particular
Yes.
employee, who they feel is worthy. And I've always said, align it to a company value, so that
Great.
it's recognizable that way.
Yeah.
Um, some of the other things that I talk about, it could be, again, once in a blue moon, let's take people out. Again, it's all budget sort of,
Yes.
cost sort of permitting, but take out for a meal, or
Yeah.
having a few drinks after work, on paid by the company,
Yeah.
or on the odd occasion, say for example, you're celebrating the end of a really challenging project. Let's get some pizzas in. Let's get some
Yes.
pizzas. Let's do a buffet. Let's have a couple of drinks in the office, as long as it doesn't go mad.
Yeah.
That's a great, recognition, isn't it,
Yes.
for the team as a whole, or a particular department.
Yeah.
I think what's important with this one is that it's consistent. You don't
Yes.
just do it and then you don't do anything for another 6 months. It needs to be regular, and it
Yeah.
needs to be sort of on a regular basis and consistent. Um, and I think recognizing people's achievements is just really important, because we might all think, oh, our employees are not really comfortable with that public recognition. Well, it doesn't have to be public.
Yeah.
It could be a letter or an email that's sent to that
Yes.
employee. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be a great big presentation in front of
Yeah.
everybody. It can be, and I think a great way of recognizing is posting something on social media as well, with a picture of
Yeah.
the employee or the team, and just publicly recognizing them
Yeah.
that way. That's another very effective way. And employees will work harder. They will put in
Yeah.
more if they're feeling that their hard work is being recognized.
Yeah.
They're not going home at the end of the day and going, I did a really, really tough job and no one thanked me for it.
Yeah.
Sometimes a thank you is all that's enough in these
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah. And the bit on there as well, Maria. So I work with organisations around disc profiling, so and really get organisations to tailor how they can recognise people. So yeah, my personality likes recognition in public, in front of people. Great, I love
Yeah,
that. It gives me a real buzz.
absolutely.
But we've got other people that are more introverted, would like so really tailoring the approach will then
Absolutely.
kind of bring that employer go, do you know, you know who I am, and
Yes.
that's the kind
Yeah.
of it. But yeah, recognition, and I think going back
Yeah.
to too many people forget about a thank you.
Yeah.
So, and actually, the bit for me is saying thank you for what that person's done means
Exactly.
more rather than just, oh, thanks. What's
Yeah.
that? We're saying actually thank you for putting the extra hours in, or you've given up that time from your family. Those people go, oh,
Yeah.
do you know what? You know me.
Yeah. Yeah. It loses its value if you say it, but you don't really mean it. You've got
Correct.
to associate it with what they've done
Yes.
to achieve, or to get that thank you, really.
Yes.
If you're particular, but then the employee's perspective as well, that they know then that you've recognized the fact that they did a great job on that
Yes.
particular task or that particular project, or that you handled that particularly challenging client or
Yeah.
customer really well. It's not just thank
Yeah.
you for your hard work today, because that will lose its value if it's
Yes.
done every
Correct.
single day.
Yeah.
It has to be linked to something, a specific
Yeah.
task or a specific project as well.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways of
Yeah.
recognizing people's achievements, and I've given sort of 3 or 4 examples there that they
Yeah.
don't cost the earth. They really
No.
don't cost the earth,
Yeah.
but they are
It's just about
very,
being
very
thoughtful,
effective.
isn't it? Being thoughtful and aware that how the
Absolutely,
importance of it, isn't it?
totally, yeah,
And
it
so
is.
what would the step three lead on to? So we've got colleague careers, recognition and achievements. What would step three
So
move
step
into?
3 is involve your employees, and there is one that it could be quite sort of a bit of an over what's the word I'm looking for, but a little bit of grey into the next one. But
Yeah.
the involve your employees is very much about not just asking the employee for the occasional idea or suggestion,
Yes.
but it's collaborative approach.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
for example, help the employees working with you as a manager or a company
Yeah.
to set their goals, set the strategy, set their KPIs, for example.
Yeah.
We're not saying there you go, take a piece of paper and sort out,
Yes.
what you want to achieve over the next 12 months, but working collaboratively to set some realistic
Yeah.
timescales, some realistic KPIs, for example, and realistic goals.
Yeah.
And these it's giving the employee responsibility and accountability for their own development and for their
Yes.
own achievements as well,
Yeah. Good.
and overall success of the business, isn't it?
Yeah.
If the employees are involved in those decisions, then they're going to own it, and they're going to
Yes.
do the work
Yeah.
to get to that point, really.
Yeah.
Sharing ideas, suggestions, and again, I've always said you can share, you can ask your employees, and you can
Yeah.
open up the floor to ask and involve employees, but if you don't do anything about it, again, it loses its value,
Yeah.
and it won't work, because employees will give up, and over time
Yes.
they'll go, well, what's the point of that? So I've always said, if you're asking people for their ideas, if you're asking people to be involved, then take those ideas on board. Those ones that
Yes.
are workable and are feasible. Absolutely take them on board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it does kind of have a little bit of overlap into the next one, but
Sorry, you
some of the
carry on.
ideas.
We'll
It's
naturally
okay.
follow on.
But this is also about, open, transparent communication. So it works both
Yeah.
ways. So where in my last role, well, my last two roles actually, I set up a monthly newsletter.
Yeah,
So
good.
one of the things that people always talk about is that, when you look at annual salaries, engagement surveys, sorry, I should say, one of the big things that comes out of it is that employees don't feel communicated, that they
Yes.
don't know what's going on in the business.
Yeah.
So this newsletter was designed to share news, to share sort of the vision,
Yes.
share the progress of the business. Now, I'm not talking give all the intricacies of
Yes. Yeah.
how the business is performing, but the top line really.
Yeah.
And again, it's another forum for sharing and
Good.
recognizing
Yeah. Yeah.
achievements. Employee of the month. This person's completed
Yes.
15 years. Fantastic. This is great. And recognize certain days of recognition. Happy Father's Day.
Yes.
You can kind of put that and include that. But also, what I encourage is the MD or the CEO,
Yes.
for him or her, to have a briefing with employees as
Good.
well
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
share information around the business. And again, asking for ideas and asking for
Yes.
suggestions. Um, Something else that I think is really quite key within the business, and I've done these projects over a
Yeah.
couple of companies that I've worked for, that they've wanted to look at their vision, their mission,
Yes.
and also set some company values. If you're doing that, it's absolutely worthless if a group of directors are sitting in a room and going, "Yep,
Yeah.
those are
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
four values. Let's share it with our employees." It's not going to engage your employees. They're not going to own it. They're not going to
Yes.
drive it. Involving your employees around, what does this business mean to you? What does
Yeah.
a good job mean to you? What do you see as your own personal values, and how does that
Yes.
align with the company? And then working with the employees and groups, you're like
Yeah.
focus groups, of designing the values, the company core
Yes.
values. That way you're going to have employees better engaged
Yeah.
and driving them on a daily basis if they have been involved in
Yeah.
creating them. It's
Yeah.
great, to see that these values were designed with the employees. They're the
Yes.
ones that have designed it. Um,
Yeah.
so you're more likely to get people behind that and driving that
Yeah.
forward if you're asking them to
Yeah.
design it as well.
Well, it's interesting as well, Maria. I remember going back in my career, sometimes we had the values and they were a mouthful. So they weren't like easy to work out, but
Yeah.
we were tested on them. So it wasn't demonstrating the values.
Mm.
It was, could you recite the values? So you
Mm.
didn't really practice it, and you were never judged on how you practice it, whether you could recite them. And that's
Yeah,
just missing the point again. If you
it
can
is.
involve employees, and it's not, I've found over my career, if you give people a voice, they may
Yeah,
not agree, you may not implement, but they've got a voice to say, I've actually had a contribution, I put something into it.
you do.
And I also wanted to touch on the point you said earlier about um, the kind of CEOs or members listening, or focus groups, or doing something about what the colleagues say. I've experienced so many times over the years where people have had focus groups, they've done nothing with it. And sometimes at the end of the focus group, they've gone, right, we're going to do this. And they've not listened to a single, and I think you've just missed the point.
Absolutely.
And that genuineness
Completely.
has gone, and
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah, employees will not contribute if they don't feel that they're being listened. They will
Yeah.
give up, and it's the same thing with employee engagement surveys. It absolutely undermines the whole point of doing them if
Yeah.
you do nothing with the results at the end of it. If you
Yes.
don't then speak to employees, you look at action plans and you actually revisit them, and
Yeah.
you work through them, you share the results.
Yes.
I'm shocked at how many organizations don't share the results of their
Yeah.
engagement surveys. And I'm thinking, well, what's the point of that? People want to
Yes.
know what the results are. They want to know that they're feeling the same way as the next person and the
Yes.
next person.
Yeah.
And what are you as a company going to do do about it. So
Yeah.
it's really, really important whenever I have facilitated or managed staff surveys,
Yeah.
employee engagement surveys when I've worked
Yeah.
as an employee. One of the big things that I always said, and past managers or past
Yeah.
employees and colleagues will always tell you, is that I've said there is absolutely no point in doing this if all you're going to do is here's the results and then you're going to put it in a drawer and don't visit it
Yes.
for 11 months
Correct.
until the next year.
Yeah.
It's completely worthless and it's a waste of
Yes.
money
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're having an external provider
Yes.
that is managing that process.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important to share the results, first of
Yes.
all. And employees will not be honest if you don't do that and if
You're
you don't
correct.
involve them and you're not demonstrating the actions that you're taking,
Yeah.
because they'll just think, what's the point next year? And then the year
Yeah.
after, they just like, well, no one's listened to us for the
Correct.
last 5 years. I'm not going to bother. And
Yeah.
then they don't participate. And then
Yeah.
the company will then be saying, oh, well, we've only got 15% of our employees that
Yes.
have completed a survey. Well, there's your reason why.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's about that open and
Yeah.
transparent communication and also building up, a bit of a momentum beforehand
Yeah.
that, this is what we're going to do and we
Yes.
want you to complete it because we want you to be honest.
Yeah.
And, it's that build up before of
Yes.
communication and this is what we're going to do. And if you say it, do it.
Yeah. Correct. No, absolutely spot on. And what would be step 5, the last one, bringing it together? What would be that
Okay.
one?
So the next one is giving employees a voice, actually.
Yeah.
And this is a two-step kind of approach, really, and it
Yeah.
provides employees with the platform to feedback. So again, that's where kind of the bit of the overlap with the previous one,
Yes.
but the platform for feedback, firstly, and secondly, to actually listen and use the feedback given by
Yeah.
employees. Suggestions and ideas, suggestion box, for example,
Yes.
employee engagement surveys we just talked about. Another thing is kind of, sometimes when directors are having board meetings, is have a slot at the end or at the
Yeah.
beginning of a board meeting to invite employees to ask questions and
Yes.
to,
Yeah. Yeah.
discuss things or a particular project. It's really going to get all the directors together. We all know sometimes in a larger organization where you've got a number of people
Yeah.
in your leadership team, your directors, that they're very, very busy. They're not
Yeah.
always in the office, but this is the time to get them together. This is a perfect opportunity
Yes.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
invite people in. It doesn't have to be many, it could be 5 people,
Yeah.
one from each department, for example, and just ask them,
Yes.
let's talk about this, or there's a particular subject I'd like to
Yeah.
discuss. And it only needs to be a 30-minute time slot. It doesn't need
Yes.
to take
Yeah.
over the
Yeah.
board meeting. And I tell you what, employees feel so valued by being
Yeah.
asked to do that because they see and they get that the company value their opinions and want to
Correct.
listen to them.
Yeah.
So it has a massive, massive impact. And, by doing this, people, employees will feel valued and then they
Yeah.
will continue to provide and share their ideas and
Yeah.
suggestions to, because they feel like they're being heard.
Yeah.
So it's a
Well,
great way of having, by employees having that voice. It's a great way of
yeah.
increasing engagement because they feel invested within the business as
Yeah.
well.
And it goes back to, which is just a similarity. When people go for job interviews, I always say to people, it's a two-way process.
Yes, it
It's
is.
not just being, interrogated by, and this is the same thing about involved. What you're saying there, Marie, is bringing the colleagues in. It's two ways. It's a win-win approach. We get to listen
It
to
is
your views,
totally.
and there's so many great CEOs, some really good CEO board members that surround themselves with really good, strong people or different people that have a different view from them, so they
Yeah,
can give ideas and they grow the business, keep growing. Whereas
absolutely.
where I see narrower CEOs that will only surround themselves with people that will say yes to them. And
Mhm.
actually, they don't want people's views to that survey because that's not what they want to hear. So it
Exactly.
creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? But I just think the more you can
Absolutely.
surround yourself with views,
Yeah.
the better it's going to be.
And I've experienced that firsthand, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's when there's a difference between a business flourishing and a business that just won't grow. It will stay the same
Yes.
or it won't succeed at all.
Yeah.
Because why employ people to do these specific roles
Yes.
and pay them, excuse me, pay them good money
Yeah.
when you're not inviting them to and asking them, and you're not listening
Yes.
to them, you're not valuing their opinions. They're experienced in that role
Yeah.
or in that knowledge and that skill for a reason. They've been doing it
Correct.
for X amount of years. And if you're not open to that feedback, your business is not going to succeed
Yes.
at all.
Yeah.
I've also said, there's that psychological safety as well.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
obviously about sort of ensuring a healthy workplace and
Yeah.
culture. So employees want to be able to feel that they can speak up and they
Yeah.
can have an opinion without fear of persecution,
Yes.
fear of
Yeah.
of something happening because they've spoken up. People go, I don't want to say anything because I'm a bit worried
Yeah.
about how that's going to look on me. Well, if you're setting this safe environment
Yes.
and you're creating a culture that's safety, people won't feel that fear, and they
Yeah.
will feel that they can challenge and involve themselves, and they can ask these things. But also with regard to a healthy work environment, there are, again, it doesn't have to cost anything, but there are
Yes.
some really simple ways of, it's not just about somebody's health and well-being. There are
Yeah.
things that will cost a business, such as like an employee assistance program or
Yeah.
counselling
Yes.
sessions if somebody's going through a
Yeah.
particularly difficult time. But there are some really simple things which go a long, long way. I believe it was Timpson's, the owner of Timpson's, that
Yeah.
put in this really, really simple idea of giving grandparents, that when a grandchild was being born, a day off, a paid day off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was like, it's amazing. And as an
Yes.
employee, how valued are you going to feel that you're
Yeah.
getting an extra day off to see, your
Yeah.
grandchild on, when they've been born
Yeah.
or just after they've been born? That's a special moment. And,
Yeah.
some other ideas, starting a bit later for a parent of a child that's starting their first day at school.
Yes.
That's a
Yeah.
really important
Yeah.
day and can be quite upsetting, quite emotional, bit of a
Yeah.
roller coaster for parents. And why do they don't have to take the whole day off? Why
Yes.
don't they just come in a bit later and you pay them
Yeah.
for it? That goes a long way from an
Yeah.
employee's perspective, that, what, my employer really cares about me.
Yes.
They really
Yeah.
understand and they really care. So they
Yeah.
will give back more as a result of that.
Yeah.
So these are some really, really simple things
Yeah.
that have a highly effective way of
Yes.
increasing employee engagement.
Yeah. And it's a bit there of it works both ways. So if organizations are listening today, some people say to me, even the work I do, "Oh, Steve, that's so soft, that's so nice, etc." No, the things we do are good for our employees, good for the
Yeah,
colleagues, good for the customer, and good for the
absolutely.
productivity of the organization. They all link,
Yeah.
don't they?
They all do,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the figures and the data will speak for itself. If
Yeah.
you're increasing, employee engagement, if you're doing if not all, but at least some of these strategies, and then you start to see your the number of grievances that are
Yes.
going to be
Yeah.
lowered. If you're going to see your absence levels decrease, you're going to see
Yeah.
your retention levels increase, and you are going to then become an employer where people are going to talk about you. Oh, that's a really nice place to work for. And employees will always share their experiences. So
Yes.
if you're an employer that has, not listened to your employee, not invested that time, not recognized, they will talk about that to the employee,
Yeah.
their circle of friends, who then talk about it to their
Yes.
circle of friends. There's, things such as Glassdoor, there's LinkedIn, there's
Yeah.
Facebook, there's that social media platform now that people can talk about these and make
Yeah.
these comments about your business. It's very, very open
Yes.
nowadays. And you don't want to get that reputation. You don't want your reputation of your business to be damaged. So by creating these and following,
Yeah.
if not all of these, but most of these strategies, people are going to talk about what a great employer you are, and they're going to
Yes.
want to work for you.
Yeah.
So, it's a great way to attract employees, and
Yeah.
especially, when your competitors are trying to do their
Yes.
best, whether it's increasing salaries, it's not about
Yeah.
that. It's about
No.
being that employer of choice, as I
Yeah.
call it.
And so that I've grabbed everything here from my perspective, we said about kind of step one is colleague careers, step two, looking at recognition and achievement, step three is about involving employees, step four is about transparent communication, and then step five, if I grab that right, that's about having the colleague's voice so that they're involved from that point as well. Or have I
Well,
missed something
yeah,
there? Or
the 3 and 4 is slightly mixed up. So yeah,
oh,
the invest in employees' careers is one. Step two is recognizing employees' achievements. Step three is involve your employees.
yes,
Step four is giving employees a voice. And then step five is ensure a healthy work environment. So it's about
wonderful.
building that culture of people being open and
Yes,
being able
great.
to speak up.
Yeah, fantastic. And we always get asked, Maria, kind of on the podcast, what self-development are you working on for 2023? What's, you haven't looked to
Oh.
develop yourself?
Oh, so I, having set up my own business, it's been
Yeah,
a really, really busy few months actually, and it's getting
yeah,
very, very busy. So for me, I always keep up to date with the CIPD,
yeah,
sort of online sessions that I can get involved in. I'm also part of various HR Facebook sites, so I'm always
yeah,
looking at there, asking
yes,
questions, answering questions, and so it just
yeah,
keeps raise your awareness really.
yes,
But there's some really good organisations that set up sort of these bite-sized sessions to
yes,
develop myself. Last year, I also became an associate member of the Institute of Leadership and Management.
excellent.
So
Yeah,
that would be something that I want to
yeah,
develop as well. But I also, yeah, so sort of I've started sort of from a coaching
yeah,
perspective. But I also in the last couple of years, I'm an in-house mediator, trained
yeah,
workplace, sorry, mediator as
yeah,
well, which I've utilised quite recently with a couple of
yeah,
clients and their employees. But for me, yeah, it's very much about sort of the business really and
yes, yeah,
developing the business,
yeah,
but also keeping on top of employment law and
yeah,
understanding and making sure that the advice that I'm giving is
yes,
accurate,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah, definitely. No, no, it's a complex world, very complex
It
world.
is,
So,
definitely.
from my point of view, I just want to say a big thank you today. You've been wonderful, and I really appreciate your honesty. And I know you and I would definitely made a really good connection for building our relationship, which is wonderful. Um, how can people get hold of you, Maria? So to make contact or reach out to, what's the best way?
Yeah, okay. So it could be either visiting my website, so it's www.saxonhrconsultancy.co.uk, or by email, maria.wilson@saxonhrconsultancy.co.uk. But also telephone
Yes.
01795 390 010. So there's all my contact details there.
Fantastic. And also, Maria's missed out there because where we made contact was through LinkedIn. So catch out with Maria on LinkedIn as well. She does some fabulous
Yes,
posts,
of
real
course.
honesty, some really good stuff. So I would reach out to Maria there as well. So can I just say a huge thank you for
Yeah.
today, being our guest on our show. And I just look forward to with your posts, but also seeing where the future goes for both of us. So I really appreciate it coming on
Uh,
today, Maria.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
You're very welcome.